Hey there! So in this video I want to talk about the map method, which is a common question that comes up in coding interviews. What exactly is the map method? How do you use it in JavaScript? And why would you use it? What's the point of it? So let's go over that today here. So the thing that the map method does in a nutshell is it takes an array and then it performs some kind of calculation on the array, and then it returns a new array of all those values with that calculation performed on it. So it doesn't just happen like on one thing, it happens on every single item in the array. So if you remember, I kind of talked to you a little bit about how you could look up any method in JavaScript by using MDN. So let's say you wanted to know about the map method on the array. You could just type map and array inside MDN, and then you would click on the result that showed you array prototype map. And you can think again in terms of prototypes without being overly complicated. Essentially, like, these are built-in methods that are provided for you from JavaScript. Anytime you create like a JavaScript variable that is an array, then you get all these map methods as well as length methods, flat, for each, join, all of this stuff comes built in. It's not just you get back an array, you get back a huge object that's called an array with a whole bunch of methods and properties that you can use at your convenience. So that's really what's actually going on under the hood. So going back to our example here, that's why I'm able to say array map, because this is a built-in method, and then I can say, all right, I want to do something, so I'm going to create a simple function here with each item in my array, and I want to multiply them by 2. So we'll go ahead and say return the current item and multiply that by 2. And so we need to save this somewhere, so I'm going to actually save this in something called a new mapped array, and we'll go ahead and console log the new mapped array. There's no special meaning to this particular variable. I could have called it n, it could have called it array2. It doesn't matter. I just like to name it what exactly it is, so that way it's easier for me to understand, oh, okay, this was a mapped array and this was the original array. So save, and then because I'm using Node.js, I have special access to the variable node in my console, and so anytime I write a JavaScript file, I can just type node followed by the name of the file and then press enter, and then I'll see my output in the console here, so long as I wrote console log. So here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and of course multiplying it by 2 returns 2, 4, 6, 8 for each item in the array. So that's exactly how map works. Now somebody might ask you a more complicated question. Great, you showed me how map works. I have some data for you, and I want you to map over each item in this particular array and change it to something else, right? So commonly, sometimes people might ask you, okay, here's an array. And what I'd like you to do is I want you to basically go over each item in this array. You can notice that it's a JavaScript object, and I want you to change the prices, because we don't just serve Americans, we also serve people in other countries. One place that we want to sell our stuff is Japan, so the dollar to Japanese yen, I believe, is 106. So we'll just put Y here for yen. So you need to show these prices in yen. So you might ask, well, how do you do that? Well, if you remember our map function, that's really handy. You can use the map function. So we'll do data.map, and we'll go ahead and actually put let new data, map data, if we want to call that. And then we'll go ahead, and this time we'll use ES6 syntax because it's pretty similar to ES5, but a little bit shorter and more convenient. So same thing, we have the item, and then we want to return, and we'll use brackets just so we have a little bit more space to play around inside of our function. Again, anything on the right hand side is the function body, anything on the left hand side is basically the parameters for your function. If you only have one parameter, you don't need the parentheses, but you can use parentheses if you want, but I choose not to. And so here the question is, okay, so what am I supposed to do next, right? So this is where it gets a little hairy, because it's like, okay, if you just return, right, item.price, and I'll go ahead and type 106 here, save that, and then I need to console log the new mapped data. So if I type that, press node, you see I get back the prices, which is correct. The prices have been mapped, but the interviewer might be wanting you to return all of the data, right? Like not just the prices. So he wants back all the objects too. So in this case, I would refer you to using a special method called object assign. And so we're going to take a look at that real quick. And this is just an extra bonus here. This is just for fun. But essentially what this does is it gives you a way to create a new object, so long as you take the target object, this target right here, A1, B2, and then you have a source B4, C5, right? And so this is, you know, the new thing that you want to add to your current object. So what you get back is a new object with A1, B4, C5, and so on. So it combines this object and this object together. So you can think of the target as being the original object, as well as the source being the new mapped object. And then when you put them together, you get the combined object. So that's what we're going to do too here in ours. So now that we know about object assign, we're going to use the object assign syntax that we just saw, and we're going to create a new object that is mapped by saying object assign, and then we're going to provide it with the target source, which is the current item. And then we're also going to fill it with a new price. So we're going to essentially replace price here with the item price, the current price, multiplied by 106 for Japanese yen. Save that. And now if we go ahead and console log our new map data, you'll see that, okay, we got back all the objects. We have milk, category dairy, and then price 422.94. So essentially this is our new mapped data for Japanese yen. And we could probably call this thing yen, you know, as well, just so we know exactly what exactly this particular variable is. But yeah, that's how you would use map to do something more complicated with your JavaScript data, you know, as opposed to just simple numbers. So I hope that made sense. One last thing that I'll talk about before we go is how you would write your own map function as well. Let's say you didn't have the convenience method map, which tends to have been the case for a lot of older developers. They didn't actually have a lot of these new methods built into the new JavaScript. So in that case, people use libraries like Lodash, which I'll point to you. And Lodash is just this really nice like JavaScript library, utility library that has all the different methods you could think of. They were around before you know, a lot of these methods started coming into native JavaScript. And so here, if you wanted to look up map or for each or some of the other methods that still don't exist in JavaScript, like flat map, you can come here and take a look at it. And so here you can see kind of like similar, they could take an array and then call a function on it and return a mapped value, or they can take an object and return a new mapped object, kind of like what we did. And so that's pretty cool. What I'd like to show you is how you could write your own map method like they did with this utility. So I'm going to do that now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a function called map, and then basically I'm going to take in an array and a function callback. And the function callback you can think of as basically just the same as this thing. This is the function callback that we pass to our built-in map method, as you can see here in ES6. But because we're writing our own function, we'll need to specify how we want the function to be used in this function definition. So the first thing you got to remember too is that the for each and the map methods bury the for loop, as we saw in the for each method in the other video. If you haven't seen it, I recommend checking it out. But here, essentially, I'm doing the same thing. I'm saying, okay, I want to go through the length of the array and start at 0, obviously, because arrays start at 0. And then I want to call back a function on my current value in the array. And you know, I can pass in some other properties as well. I can say index. But at the same time too, what I want to do is I want to actually return a new array, right? So I want to perform this function, And then I want to actually return back a new mapped array. So we'll say result here, and we'll just make it a basic array here. And then what I want to do is I want to take this function and then I want to push that into my result, right? So you can think of this being an empty array here, and then whatever happens in the function, we want to return from this function something to push back into this particular result array, and then we want to return the new mapped array. So let's try this out here. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to say, okay, I have an array of 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I want to return, let's say item, take the item for now, and I want to take the return the item times 2. Okay, so and then I'll need to do something with it because it returns me results. So obviously I need to put that somewhere. So we'll just say let result, or res for short, and then console log res. Save that, run it again, and looks like we got a little bit of an index problem. Oh yeah, because we don't actually have a variable called index, we have a variable called I, but I know that to be index. So we'll go ahead and press enter and save, and we'll hit node index.js, and then you can see there's my mapped array again, which is 2, 4, 6, 8. And if I did want to see that index, right, I could also say, okay, show me the index in the function. So let's actually go over here and basically add index, which will map to the I value. And I could also say, all right, console log index and then item, just so I can see that, and then basically come back over here to result, save that, and then do node index.js. So there you go. Now you see the index and you see the value, and you're good. You know how to basically write your own map function. You know how to use it for complicated examples, and you know why you should even use it in the first place. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.